But the people that they are there in their current jobs, and usually these jobs are well paid, and they have a lot of perks, and they have different benefits, right? Why do you think that they are unhappy?
Dale.
Yeah, but not just that. Also, part of the news, and this was very interesting to me. 30% of the tech professionals are looking for a job, right?
Mm.
So it's pretty high. And then when I was reading the article, basically, and another 60% they were trying to look for another job in the next year. So that's 90%. So I let's dissect that, right? Why you think that a lot of people are trying to change job? I understand, obviously, if you got laid off, then you're trying to look for a new one, right? But the people that they are there in their current jobs, and usually these jobs are well paid, and they have a lot of perks, and they have different benefits, right? Why do you think that they are unhappy? And I'll tell you what I saw in the article, and let's see if we agree. But what's your perspective?
Well, one thing maybe is I think it's the culture of job hopping. I think it's especially I think in Fang, I think it's a common thing, right?
Hmm.
You do your 2 years here or whatever the vesting period is,
It's four
and
four
then you
years
move on.
usually.
4 years. So after that, you move on to the next and you kind of start building your career like that. So I think that's maybe one thing. It's kind of expected to happen like that. A lot of times you don't see people sticking around much longer than that nowadays. I know before it used to be different, right? Where you would spend your whole career in one job. By the way, like my mother-in-law, she's retiring this year from Schlumberger,
Hmm.
oil and gas company, right?
Hmm.
And she's there for I don't her whole career. She was there. It's basically like 40 years or something.
Wow.
And one company, and a good thing Schlumberger does do pensions. So I mean that's a good thing, right? It's just, but you don't see that anymore. It's just kind of a different way of approaching work and jobs nowadays, right? And again, jobs nowadays don't usually have pensions either. So the expectation is that you're going to be moving from one job to another, I think. So that's one thing, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. I think that there might be multiple, right? In the article, they were saying that it was kind of people that were looking for a work-life balance. Um, but maybe let's define that, right? What do you think that people is thinking with that? I have a very interesting opinion about that, but from your perspective, what is that?
Okay, so maybe just start with the basics, right? Work life balance, 40 hours a week. That's kind of just your standard. 40 hours a week. Is it
Mm,
more or is it less? I don't think many times it's going to be less, but there's going to be some folks that have some pretty cush jobs and they can probably do multiple jobs really. And that's the whole kind of overemployment, OE is what they're calling it, approach, where you can have 2 to 3 full-time jobs. Of course, the whole work from home piece or work remote piece is what's enabling that. So that's another thing that people usually talk about when they're talking about work-life balance is being able to work remotely. A lot of folks don't like going into the office because one, it's either maybe too far, the commute,
yeah,
they're saving money and stress on the commute. Or two, some people don't like the human interaction. Maybe there's more introverts,
yeah,
especially maybe in the tech industry.
yeah.
They prefer to just sit down, do their work, get in the zone, put their headphones on, and crank stuff out. They do that. So I think that has something to do with it.
Yeah, but from my opinion, yeah, all of the above, right? Um, but the problem is that we don't get empathy from other jobs, right? Like let's say my wife, she was a teacher in some point. Dude, she needed to be on time, right? So there's a lot of jobs that it requires you to be in a specific time. And in tech jobs, it's very flexible, right? Like some people, they just wake up at 9:30, 10 a.m. in the morning. They just log in, right? And they start just working. And it is flexible when you get in, and sometimes it will be flexible when you get out, right? So I think that usually those type of jobs, And also depends on your skill set. Some programmers might be like super fast and they might be equivalent to maybe five people, right? Why? Because their output is not linear. And we usually are used to think that kind of that output, you kind of put your hours and you're supposed to get X amount of work. But in some cases, it might not be, right? Or maybe it's funny because sometimes when I'm telling people, uh, a problem might take you several days or even several weeks. And sometimes it might be just a couple lines of code. Like literally, if you see the output, it's like, seriously, 5 lines of code? Then it took you like couple weeks, right? But the problem is that some of these systems are you have to debug and diagnose and try to understand the problem, and maybe this actually will influence and impact millions of people, right? Imagine that if they're trying to fix ChatGPT, right? And there is only one line there, and it will just literally just have an issue with millions of people. So I really think that for me, the flexibility is important, but also I think that techies, we are uh, kind of very cushioned, right, compared uh, to other jobs. And I think that sometimes we are losing maybe a little bit of the perspective. That is like, man, like we have it good, like with all of these
Yeah.
perks, right? Compared to other jobs. So I think that we just need to be fair to the company and to your team, right? And yeah, maybe if you like remote jobs, well, start looking for those.
Yeah, I think, in particular with tech, I think a lot of it can be pretty independent work where
Mm.
there's not a lot of interaction that's maybe needed throughout the day, right? So I think it lends itself to being able to, be able to go as fast as you can. You get your work done in 3 hours and then either chill, play video games. I don't know what developers are doing, outside of that work. Some people will take on a second job or moonlight or whatever the case is, right? So I think that leads itself to it. But like when we're talking about work life balance, people that are maybe not in the tech sector and are not like developers or coding and things like that, there's typically a lot of interaction that you need. And a lot of times people are like in meetings all day. That's pretty much their full job, and you need to have that interaction with other people. So it's not independent. You can't have independent work. You're really working with others throughout the day. And I know that's almost like anti what a lot of tech workers might expect to see, because it really is independent work. They're cranking out code, whatever the product it is that they're working. So it's a different way of life, but it's really interesting. I can see you might start to get burnt out if you're in a high paying job. That means there's going to be some pretty high expectations, and if you're not delivering like we're seeing right now, like people could get laid off. So
Hmm.
that's what you might see. So I think this whole like this percentages that you mentioned, 30 and 60%, over 90% of the workers thinking about that, I think it has to do with maybe the burnout, that's just kind of par for those types of jobs. Is the expectation is that you're going to move every few years. So I think that's probably it. I don't know. Do you think, let me ask you this. Do you think people that are in like these FANG jobs that are high paying, do you think they take like sabbaticals in between, in between their jobs? Like they take 6 months off before they go to the next one?
I mean, and I think that is just a little bit of the lack of awareness. Dude, they're getting paid like between 5 to 10 times more,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not expecting to work as 5, 10 times harder than others, right? So yeah, it's real. Burn down is real, right? And I think that usually I tell people, try to go in a pace that you can be in the next 5 years, 10 years, right? Consistency is like an athlete, right? It's like you don't want to pop your Achilles tendon or your knee.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about that, did you saw Sock? he he popped his like ACL, but
Ooh.
hopefully he gets better. Yeah, from the MMA sparring. But anyways, my point here is um, to be able to pace yourself And I think that that's what it happens. A person just joins a team and they start just sprinting and going very hard on everything, and suddenly in 6 months they're born down. So,
Yeah.
and I think that I hear people sometimes when they want to leave tech industry, they want to do something else completely, right? Because as you said, they're burning down. So, um, yeah, it
Yeah, I
is
could see
real.
that. Well, especially if, let's say you did Fang for like 10 years or something like that. 10 years, you might have $5 million saved up or close to that, right? And after 5 million, you can, if you really wanted to, set up your account so that you just get a dividend or a yield every month, and that's your income. You don't really have to work anymore. So you might still need to have to do something, right? So you're not
Yeah,
bored. So they'll leave kind of the industry that they started off in and do something like, I don't know, underwater basket weaving,
yeah.
something just way out there, right?
The problem, though, is that talking about the tech hubs, some of these places are very pricey. Like San Francisco, you have to pay like 2 meals, 3 meals to get use a house, right? So with a backyard, and that's the thing. They will have to move, and some of these people they really like San Francisco, they really like Seattle, right? So, uh, but yeah, they will have to make those decisions easily. They can move to any other place, right? Lower income, basically location, and they can retire, as you said, with that amount of money easily. They can just put in a in some T bills to be able to get, I don't know, maybe 6 to 7% depending on the interest rates, and yeah, they can live out of that. So but yeah, it was interesting to see that how the techies are um, looking into a job, but might be reflective and on other jobs.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm sure there are some other jobs that do pay as well. Um, they're not as they don't come by as often as what you might see in tech. I do remember seeing some people would do like a day in the life of a Googler or something like that. Have you seen these
Yes, I have seen
Instagrams?
it. Yeah,
And they're like, oh, I wake up at 9. Oh, I walk onto campus at by 10. I grab my coffee. By 10:30, I have my first check-in. And then, that's how kind of the whole day goes. And then by the end of the day, they've only done 30 minutes of work. And so it's like, yeah, I think I've seen like they got caught or whatever, the wrong person saw that and they got fired. So I mean, I guess be careful what you put out there because people are watching and it might not look good on your part, right?
yeah, and also for me that's kind of like your work ethic, right? It's like, come on. I mean, you're bragging that you are literally only working 30 minutes, right? So yeah, I think that each person can do whatever they want, right? But at the end of the day, that's not being fair to their team, to their company, and all of that, right? So sometimes corporations they look evil, right? Everybody's like, oh, against corporations, and it's like they just want money. Yeah, but if imagine if you are actually literally hiring an employee and he's not putting the agreement, right? At least X amount of hours. Yeah, it's not cool. I don't think that is cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. And especially if you're managing a team where you have like star people and then you have the people that are just working the system. It's like, okay, in some places it's really hard to fire people, so you might just end up being stuck with them. So that's also the hard part. So I mean, fortunately, I think a lot of Fang, I don't think they really would blink an eye to let go of people um, if they're not performing, but in other places it's not as easy.
Yeah, and most places you can depend also on the law, on the state, and so on the country. But yeah, you have to formulate kind of a document, right? And you have to paper trail. So in that way, kind of everybody's covered and the expectations are set, right? So, but yeah, I think that depending of the state, some states are more um, open about that. So, but yeah, I think that for me is like, man, when you catch those type of people, because I have seen some people through my career, and it's like this is bad, right? And trying to set the expectations is like and it's to me so weird that you have to say that. It should be kind of obvious, right? But it's not.
Yeah, for sure. I know my personality, I'm usually at 100% doing one thing or another. That's where this podcast is coming from, right? We're both kind of wired in a way where it's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. We're putting it all out there. And so, but some people aren't like that. And they're going to try and get something without putting in the work. So I don't
Yep.
know.
Yep.